We know that immersive video creators are always hoping for new cameras with great image quality at a cost that independent producers can afford. The Immersive Company creates high fidelity immersive content for clients thanks in part to their own proprietary camera system. So, when the Immersive Company published a teaser announcement in June letting us know that they were working on a production solution that would be available to purchase this fall, it definitely got our attention. But like any good teaser, we're left with lots of questions. Luckily, I was able to sit down for a conversation with Andrew Gisch, one of the co founders of the Immersive Company. Now, they're not ready to reveal everything quite yet, but I did get answers to many of the most important questions, including the big one: is this a camera? It turns out their system does include an immersive camera, but there's so much more to the story. So let's jump in and see what we can learn about what the Immersive Company calls the new frontier. So first, wanted to say hello to you, Andrew Gisch. Thank you for joining me for this conversation today.
Yeah, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I think we should probably recognize upfront that you are one of the founders of the Immersive Company, and your business partner is Andrew Chang. And so, just to get started, I wanted to kind of get to know a little bit about you and other Andrew. You know, when I meet people in the immersive video space, I always hear how you have such a great reputation. You're well known, you're well respected. But for anybody who may be watching this who's not familiar with you, I was wondering if you could give us just a little bit about your background and what led you to founding the Immersive Company.
Yeah, I got started I had a technical background from college. Moved into New York City out of school right after the financial crisis, and basically got into film production randomly. So film and commercial production, working with advertisers, different commercial production companies. I did pretty well, but for being younger, I kind of burnt myself out on the commercial production game, and I was looking for something else. And right around that time, Oculus was a Kickstarter, and I had the
Okay.
experience, like I think a lot of us do, where you put on a headset for the first time, you feel that sense of presence, and you're like, "This is the future." And I thought to myself then, and I still think to myself now, like, when do you have an opportunity to define what a new creative medium is, what a new storytelling medium is? And I basically took that and ran with it. At that time, that meant going into a VR startup back then, which is called Visionary VR, later turned into Mind Show. After Apple entered the space, which we were waiting on for a long time, I am very excited about. I was doing some new explorations as to how to push things forward, and different camera gear and the spatial photo side. And one thing led to another, and I actually came across Andrew Chang and saw that he was doing very similar things, and had pushed things fairly far himself, and had done a lot of very interesting things on the software side as well. He comes in on the highly technical side, and also credit to him, he has done. He's very passionate about the VR and immersive filmmaking side as well. And from my humble perspective, I think he's done a tremendous amount in just the past 2 or 3 years that he's been looking at it, to be quite an authority in the space as well. So it all just made sense to try to push the medium as far forward as possible for as many people as possible.
So can you tell us a little bit more about the Immersive Company itself? I think most people watching this interview might have first heard of you when you released Prima, the streaming video app. And now we're hearing about this production solution that we want to talk about today. So I'm curious how those are connected and if you have any particular mission statement or some sort of specific mission of the Immersive Company.
So we are ultimately trying to push the highest sense of detail and quality, and the accessibility for that to the greatest number of creators, and thus the greatest audience. And a part of that is also across all platforms. So I think it's important here to talk about what I sometimes refer to as fragmentation. So I think among all the big players in the space, and among all the creators and the people who are active in the VR community, there's been a lot of different sort of isolated ecosystems for where content consumption, content creation, activity in the space exists. And I think we all want to have adoption happen. We're all passionate about this medium. Essentially, we see at Immersive Company this being a little bit of a problem for true
Mhm.
adoption to grab hold. And so, a high sense of realism and a high sense of quality is necessary for things to truly feel immersive and for this medium to sing.
Yeah.
And so, as much as we can enable that on as many platforms for as many creators and as many viewers as possible, that's what we're trying to do.
As one of those creators, I'm thrilled with that. I love that mission. And that brings us really to the main reason we're talking today. You put out, or the Immersive Company put out this teaser announcement. I think it was on June 10th, and I actually want to read directly from the announcement that you posted on LinkedIn. There's a line that said, "This fall, we're introducing a new frontier in cinematic VR and immersive production. We did not create an iteration. We created the ultimate accessible tool we all wish existed." Now, first, I noticed, at least in that part of the announcement, the one on LinkedIn, you didn't use the word camera, but there was a picture included that looks like a camera. So I'm wondering if you are ready to or interested in clarifying a little bit more about what this ultimate tool is, and is it a camera?
So you're correct to point out we've referred to it as a solution. I can say it's a hardware and software component. Um,
Okay.
and the hardware does not require the software. So if you just want to use the hardware independently, let's call it a camera solution. You are able to do so, and you are able to utilize traditional VR workflows or immersive media workflows. You will have the option for software as well that will provide a series of other benefits, but it's not a requirement. So it's agnostic to the software. And if you never use the software, you would find the hardware a compelling solution. And I'll say I'll also say that we are planning on delivering this in such a way that you can utilize all of the Apple formats that they've put out as well. And that
Okay.
there are if you're thinking about the other cameras coming out, other immersive cameras, this will be able to also shoot in a few, well, at least two formats, let's say. So it won't just be locked into immersive.
Okay. And
Let me
you,
let me actually say something
yeah.
up front here. I do want to. So why are we like being? Why are we're teasing this out, and like why aren't we giving more
Okay.
information? I would say the main reason that we're not providing more details right now is because I mean already we're getting questions from people about comparing it to other systems, other cameras. How does it compare to the R5c, the V Raptor, the Cine Immersive? And at least on the Cine Immersive side, we don't want to put out too much information before we can do those direct comparisons ourselves. We don't have footage from that. No one has those cameras yet, or they're just starting to come out now. If we're at July 2nd when this is being recorded, but that's why we're being careful. We're not trying to troll people. We just know that as soon as we put this stuff out, everyone's going to want to see footage. They're going to see direct comparisons one to one, and we think that this is going to be a complementary tool set to the Cine Immersive. But nonetheless, people are going to be interested in seeing the differences, and so that's what we're trying to be sensitive to here.
And so you mentioned that it could work with traditional, I think you might have said post-production VR techniques. Are you referring to editing applications that we already know and use?
Yeah, as in, yeah, exactly. As in tools that you would edit and process immersive or VR footage. Yeah.
Okay. But you said it would also be compatible, and you didn't say the Apple immersive video workflow, but is that what you were referring to?
So I definitely don't want to say that it's going to work in the
Right.
exact same way as the Cine
Gotcha.
Immersive. What we don't have the full build of Resolve to be able to play with that right now.
Right.
That's a different workflow, right? I want to be
Yeah.
clear about that. What I can say is that you'll be able to deliver in the same way. You will be able
Gotcha.
to deliver it as Apple Immersive Video. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Well,
the way that Apple has worked with Blackmagic and designed their streamlined, post process with that type of specific metadata, that is proprietary to Apple, and we're not doing the exact same thing there.
great. Okay. Good to have that clarification and know where certain lines are drawn. And of course, more information to come in the future, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I do want to take a moment and think about vocabulary because this is something I see a lot of confusion on. We hear about spatial video, we hear about immersive video, we hear about VR video. I'm wondering, first of all, would you say that the Immersive Company deals exclusively in immersive video? And can you clarify what immersive means compared to the term spatial?
So we do not deal exclusively in immersive video.
Okay.
That is certainly one area that we do, and we intend to also exist within the Apple immersive video sphere. Let me just step back for a second, and so terminology in VR. This is something that is um, it's a little bit tricky. Apple Immersive Video is um, 180-degree or slightly more field of view, but cropped into 180 by 180 with metadata. VR 180, by comparison, does not have the same type of metadata that's used all the way through. Um, and then on the spatial side, so spatial versus 3D, spatial is essentially rectilinear 3D with metadata. And what that metadata does exactly, I probably shouldn't make full claims on the full extent of that, but it has to do with, I believe, comfortability as one factor.
Hmm.
And then traditional rectilinear 3D, or just 3D as they say, doesn't have that metadata.
So if Apple's definition of immersive is more or less a 180-degree VR view in 3D with extra metadata that gives it increased quality, increased visual perspective, that sounds more or less like the game you're playing with the equipment from the Immersive Company. That same sort of type of video.
Yeah, I mean, this is tricky because we are not trying to say that we are Apple's format that they created. There are ways to also adapt to their format with cameras outside of what we're doing with other capture methods. As far as we know with the information at hand. Um, what we have optimized for and what we have charged at is detail. We are trying to create the highest detailed, highest fidelity um, content, whether that's immersive media, whether that's VR, but just to give people the sense of teleportation, of
Mm,
truly being in a space. But the nomenclature is difficult, and it's been
yeah.
tough as someone in the space for a long time to try to even have a common language with talking with other creators about it. That's been a challenge. That's been a challenge. So,
And I
um,
think there's
yeah.
something like that in traditional video where there's all the fun technical stuff that people like you and me like to talk about, but then there's the end user experience. And they don't want all that jargon, all that complexity, all that technical information. So, a bit of this conversation is for the tech geeks, but also we want to recognize that you're creating technology that will enable creators to make something for the end user that's comparable to their experience with Apple Immersive Video. I hope I'm
I
saying
would
that
encourage.
correctly.
Yeah, I would encourage other people to, other people can make all the comparisons that what are we striving for? To maximize the sense of you feeling like you're there. That's what we're
Excellent.
trying to do, and then I leave it up to other people to define what that is for them, or put a, feel free to put a label on it. But that's what we're trying to do. Yeah.
Great. So recently I was pitching an idea I had for an immersive video to somebody, and he asked me, why are you doing it in this format? Why aren't you doing it in traditional video? So what are your thoughts on that? What is it creatively that makes you want to do video in an immersive format compared to traditional flat video?
Yeah, so great question. You always want to ask the question, why VR? And can it only be, is it a story or an experience that can only be told in VR, or best told in VR? And if the answer is this might actually be better just as a traditional film, then it might not be the best VR concept. One of the things that I've said is to think about the way that we experience a dream. And when you think about a dream, that's intuitive to people because everyone has experienced a dream. It's something that is intuitively distinct from a film, or in some cases a video game. So they know it's different. It does tend to have a story of some kind, or at least a feeling, a progression, and it's not necessarily tied to reality either. So you're not limited by the creative confines of just reality and physics or this world. Um, so I think as just as a creative seed, obviously that is not a concept, but like how could you start to like calibrate your head to think about VR and immersive storytelling and experiences as distinct from, let's say, filmmaking? Think about the experience of a dream.
I like that comparison. In my productions, I think a lot about putting person in that seat or standing in a place where they would not otherwise have the opportunity to be. In a way that film can do to a small extent, this can do to a much greater extent. Put people somewhere they would not otherwise be able to be. That's
That's
one
right.
of the big
That's right.
creative components. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would
Well,
say, yeah, and like in for performances, or for sports, or music,
mm,
entertainment. I think some of the most interesting choices are, where can you place someone into a perspective where even the most expensive seat in the house couldn't get that, and an experience
yeah.
that you literally can't get in sort of normal reality. So yeah.
Well, let's get back to your announcement and the technology you've been working on. And I don't know how far we can go with this, but so far I've been referring to this as the Immersive Company's teaser announcement. And I assume you're not ready to announce a name for the product. I'm just wondering if there's a code name, or is there a better way we should be referring to this?
Um, the code name is Frontier.
Oh, okay.
So
I didn't
Frontier.
expect you to give us a code name, so we can
Yep.
use that.
Well, we gotta give you guys something,
Love it. I
We gotta throw
appreciate that.
some breadcrumbs out. But yeah, the code name is Frontier.
Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about what differentiates it. You've already made a point about it being a huge priority for the Immersive Company for quality. I think we'll talk a little bit more about quality as we go. But also in the teaser announcement, you did include a price, a starting price, which places it significantly less than the Blackmagic camera, kind of closer to the range of the R5c with a full kit. So I'm wondering, do you have any thoughts or comments on that price and where that places it in the space?
Yeah, so our target price is 9,000 for the full solution. And we think that that's a really important price point to make it more accessible, while being a good balance for accessibility versus cost for the greater community and newcomers. So we think it's a nice sweet spot, and again, sort of just fills out the options there. But
Mm.
I think we mentioned the starting at on the teaser, starting at 9,000, so 8,995. We we are targeting, we're confident we are targeting that is the price for the whole kit and caboodle, basically. So
Okay.
we're not gonna say starting price is 9,000, and then by the time everyone racks it up, it's gonna be 20 grand. It's not That's not gonna be the case. Yeah.
And so when we talk about price versus video quality, I'm wondering if there are any trade-offs you had to make, or can we hope that you've been able to bridge some gaps to give us a better cost to quality value?
So quality is both sort of absolute and subjective in some sense. I think that that said, I think that people will be very happy with the quality that we're putting out with this solution. I really do. It is a bit of a balance, but we think that we did not cut any corners in delivering what we're delivering to meet people's expectations.
And speaking of frontier, and a line that I picked out in your announcement where you said the ultimate accessible tool, and I wanted to talk about that word accessible. So I wonder if you can tell us why accessibility is important and what makes it accessible. Is this about ease of use?
The simple answer could be, which is part of it, that it's accessible in terms of its price point and ease of use. And that's absolutely that is true. However, um, really, I think one of the most compelling parts of its accessibility is that we have the ability with this solution with Frontier to actually appeal to a wider audience outside of VR, outside of immersive media. So with Frontier and the way that we're positioning this, it could actually bring more people into the space that weren't even considering being in the space. And so it really has the power to grow the medium beyond just the people that are looking right now, like looking probably at this video. And so we're trying to expand even beyond the VR. One way is that, as I was alluding to earlier, you can shoot in more than just the immersive or VR format, whichever term you'd like to use there. 180-degree fisheye, you can shoot in another format if you'd like. And we'll talk more about that as things come up, but you're not limited just to that. So
Nice little teasers. Gives us something to look forward to.
the breadcrumbs, yeah, yeah.
Something else that you kind of hinted toward earlier, and I want to make sure we clarify it. I want to make sure I understood it correctly. My understanding, I could be wrong. I absolutely could be wrong here, but my understanding is that the Blackmagic Immersive Camera and the Apple Immersive Workflow will produce content for the Apple Vision Pro and no other headset. So I was wondering, do you have any thoughts about whether creators should be working with one headset in mind? Do you have thoughts about creating content for Meta Quest or the Android XR that's coming later this year? How does Frontier fit into producing content for other headsets?
So I would assume that I'm not exactly sure what Apple's plans are, if there's going to be more headsets supported at some point. But I would say that it's really important, and this is what we've considered in Frontier and in general what we're trying to do with cross platform with Prima. We want to be able to support all the platforms, and we want the highest quality of any given piece of hardware really to display. We want the highest quality on every platform to access the most a number of viewers, the widest audience. This is sort of like unifying factor. I talked about fragmenting earlier. We want to unify things together. If we are going to get to that adoption and we're going to make and distribute that type of content and monetize that content, um, we really should be pushing that out to as many platforms as possible. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I think it's important to address as many as you can if you're doing it
Yeah.
well. And yeah.
I think it does answer my question, and it is the answer I was hoping for. I mean, my preferred display device of choice is the Apple Vision Pro, but there are far many more users on MetaQuest, and there's a big potential to what Android could come out with. So if I'm going to be producing content, I prefer to produce it in a way that can be published on as many displays as possible. So I'm very happy to hear you say that. So let's talk about the people who will be using this technology. Did you design this production technology for any particular type of producer or any particular type of content creator? Do you have a general idea of who you expect to be using it?
You're gonna have a smaller form factor and you're gonna have a smaller data size. So I guess one of the reasons I point that out is when we built Immersive Camera 1 and Immersive Camera 2 and we were shooting with that, we quickly noticed how significant the data rates are. And already in the VR space, you need very high resolutions, very high frame rates. We're used to shooting a lot of data. And I would say in like the R5c era, a single camera for a few hours, depending on what just every shoot's different, maybe single camera, multiple cameras. But you're looking at terabytes, I'd say, single terabytes, unless you're doing some 10 camera shoot. Of course not. That's not going to be the case. But single terabytes, like as soon as you're doing something like the Cine Immersive, or like Immersive Camera 1 and Immersive Camera 2, you're not talking about single terabytes anymore. Like you're talking about tens of terabytes. And so the data needs are absolutely bananas. And a couple of shoots, you're already a fraction of a petabyte, basically. So the data considerations are massive. That's one thing that we think people will find compelling about Frontier. And then also being able to a smaller form factor, getting it into smaller spaces. So it'll be a really good sort of complementary option in that way for people, I think, to the Cine Immersive. Yeah.
Okay. And talking about the size of the camera, you reminded me of something I wanted to ask. And hey, maybe you're willing to answer it, maybe you're not. And that's perfectly fine. But as I think about my productions, I find myself wondering, can I put this on a drone? Is that something you're
Uh,
willing to comment on?
so I won't just comment on that for you, Nick.
Okay.
Yes, you're going to be able to put this on a drone,
Excellent.
on a gimbal, and
Okay.
on basically any motion control system.
Okay. Okay. And of course, there's all kinds of variables when we talk about moving an immersive camera. So
Right.
I really look forward to learning how that plays out. But yeah, not being locked to a tripod and the idea of being able to put it on a drone is enticing for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's another thing about accessibility, right? So
Okay. So the teaser announcement came out during the Augmented World Expo USA. That was almost a month ago. Was that intentionally? Was the announcement intentionally timed for the event? And how did AWE go for you this year?
So AWE was great. I was very happy I could go this year. The energy was super high. Got to see some headsets that I didn't know that I'd be able to see, like some of the headsets from China. That was interesting to check those out. And then the people are always the best part of conferences, right? So that
Mhm.
was a real pleasure. It's always good to. It's like kind of it's like a pilgrimage back to together with your people. Um, so that was fantastic. So our announcement was around AWE. That's right. So it was AWE right around the same time it was WWDC. Right around the
Right.
same time it was also Cinegear in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So we were thinking about announcing something around that time, and then when there was kind of this, when everything sort of stacked on top of each other, and then we realized that we could announce it, and then right around the announcement, as we're talking with people IRL, we would be able to talk more about it and answer questions. And so that was basically the logic: is that people had an excuse to come together in multiple different events, and there was going to be some interest in that conversation, and that we insert ourselves in that way.
I did want to talk just a little bit about Prima. Of course, you're not just making production technology, you're also a publisher of immersive content. And Prima is an app for the Apple Vision Pro where people can watch high quality video. The first video that you published on Prima was called Sessions. And actually, if I remember correctly, the producer of Sessions was up for an award at AWE. That was part of the whole festivities.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Shout out to Tom. Shout out to Tom.
yeah. And, of course, I was blown away by the quality. Lots of people were blown away by the quality of Sessions. So I wonder if you want to talk a little bit about what Prima is all about, what we can expect from Prima in the future.
Yeah, great question. So, Prima is a platform, and it's a platform that we want to celebrate, showcase, provide a means for monetization for other VR creators and studios. And we have the unique ability to, with our technology through the platform, you know, process and display stuff at an exceptional high detail, an exceptionally high sense of realism. Well, and a lot of that comes on our player side, on our encoder side, how we deliver the content. When we launched Prima in February, and we launched with sessions, Tom's content from the Spatialists, um, we also at the same time put out a video spec, and that video spec was 16K 90.
Mm.
Uh, and we said, you know, you get if people want to work with us, like we have our camera system, come work with us, you know, and then you can have access to the same uh, uh, detail and fidelity that comes with the camera plus Prima as a platform. Most people, I think, have been waiting for the Cine Immersive to come out, or they've been content to shoot on the R5c. So there's kind of it feels like there's almost been this sort of stagnation over the past 6 months. Um, we are very excited now. Whether people want to use Frontier, which I think they'll also be very happy with, but if you for the folks out there that are going to shoot on the Cine Immersive, you know what are we excited about? One of the things with Prima is finally there's going to be many people across the globe who are going to be able to shoot at the spec that we've been waiting for this entire time. And there's a key thing I want to highlight here, which is very important. When you talk about Apple immersive video, that spec it captures at 8K per eye, but it displays at 4K per eye. For
Mm.
those people out there who are shooting on the Cine Immersive and capturing at 8K per eye, you will be able to get an effective 8K per eye resolution displayed on Prima. The effective resolution will be higher with that camera on Prima, and it's not going to have the same metadata. It's not the app. It's not the official Apple immersive video format. It is something different. We don't have a precise name for it, but it's going to look fantastic, and we're very excited about people finally being able to capture at that spec. Now that's on the 16K 90 spec. It's a we've also been exploring stuff on, like, let's say the R5c side, and we can talk more about that. But the point is, um, regardless of what camera you're capturing on, if you put it through the Prima technology, it will display a higher detail than you think is possible. And we're super excited to show people that, and we're super excited to take um, the footage that people capture on the Cine Immersive and display it effectively closer to the native resolution that they're actually capturing, instead of just 4K per eye. And we think that that's going to be a huge advantage, and I think people will probably look at their content on Cine Immersive through Apple Immersive Video, and then look at it on Prima and be scratching their heads.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what's next on Prima. So, I guess just to kind of finish up, I'm really curious to know when we are going to learn more about your system, about Frontier. And of course, you do have a link that was in the announcement. I'll put that in the description for this video. So, a link where people can sign up to be alerted when new information is available. But can you give us an idea of when to expect some of that new information?
What is going to decide the timeline is in part when, for example, we're getting a Cine Immersive or some other cameras. These things get released because people are going to be asking about the comparisons. So there's some dependent variables there in terms of lead time on this. After we can, you know, do the direct comparisons that everyone's going to be asking for. We said in our teaser this fall, and that's what I would defer to for now. Yeah.
So, anybody who is dying to learn more, to get more information, you would say the best option would be to go to that link, which we'll have in the description of the video, and they'll be alerted when there is information to be shared.
Yeah, be the first to know. If you scroll down in that little teaser, there's just a email sign up to be alerted with more info. So if you do that, it'll pop right into our spreadsheet, and we'll let you know right away.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Andrew. I'm so excited to get more information. You gave me a few extra nuggets that I didn't expect to get today, and I think a lot of the viewers are going to be excited to see what they've got there. And we're just looking forward to when we can all get our hands on the new system and see what we can do with it. Thank you for telling us all about it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for having me. This was a pleasure.